Elevating Voices, where we get to hear writers share their transformational stories. I'm your host, Joelle Tamraz. I'm a memoir writer, a speaker, and a coach. And today, my guest is Judy Gruen. Judy and I met some time ago at a writer's bridge hosted by Allison Williams and Charla Yates, and it's my great pleasure to be welcoming her back today. Let me tell you a bit about Judy. Judy is an author of the acclaimed memoir, The Skeptic and the Rabbi, Falling in Love with Faith, and several humor books, including the Women's Daily Irony Supplement, which earned Forward Magazine's Book of the Year and a silver medal from the Independent Publisher Book Awards for humor. She is a regularly featured columnist and a book reviewer for the Jewish Journal, and her work has also appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, Boston Globe, Los Angeles Times, Woman's Day, Christian Science Monitor, Aish.com, Jewish Action, and other media outlets. I'm very excited to be speaking with you today, Judy, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joelle. It's really terrific to be with you, at least virtually.
Yes. So yeah, let's get started. Bylines and Blessings is your second memoir. Tell us a bit about it and what made you want to write a second memoir.
I didn't want to write a second memoir. I actually didn't even want to write a first memoir. My first memoir, The Skeptic and the Rabbi, was actually a protest memoir. There had been a spate of memoirs that had come out 2012 and onward that were all very anti-Orthodox. And there was just one after another, and they got a lot of acclaim. And they were very deeply hurtful to me, not because these people didn't have a right to tell their stories. Of course they did. But then the literary industry was not interested in the other side of the story, which was the fact that tens of thousands of secular Jews like me over the course of 40 years had been returning to tradition, and in doing so changing our own lives and changing the face of modern Judaism. Those stories were also real. They were happier stories, and they were not being told. And so I wrote The Skeptic and the Rabbi, again, because somebody had to tell the other side. Which is not a simplistic thing at all. It's not, and they lived happily ever after. No life is like that. But that's why I wrote that one. It was a lot of work, and I never thought I would do another memoir. But a couple of years ago, I decided that I would start a blog series about my career and stories about my career, which is 40 years and counting. Stories I'd never told, and a lot of them are just fun and funny stories, newbie mistakes, embarrassing moments, learning to overcome obstacles, those kinds of evergreen stories. And I started the blog series and I thought, uh-oh, I feel a book coming on. And I really did not want another, a book is a big, big deal, but it grew from that.
Right. And what were some of your challenges in writing the second memoir? How long did it take? And maybe you could compare to your first one as well for the listeners and viewers who may not know. Tell us when you published your first one and how long that took. Maybe you can compare those two.
So the Skeptic and the Rabbi was published by She Writes Press in September 2017. And I had been mulling it over, and I spent a year or two just in the agonizing process. And then I finally decided I have to do this. And that was another couple of years. And then I was looking for an agent and a traditional publisher, which I thought by that point in my career, I would have kind of earned that possibility, but the doors were closed, and really for the reasons I already stated. Most people in the publishing industry don't want to hear about people who become religious and are happy with it. They would like to hear about religion as dysfunction. So I published with She Writes Press, which is a wonderful hybrid publisher. They did a fantastic job. Very happy with it. The obstacle to doing Bylines and Blessings, which, I just happen to have a copy of it right here.
Great.
Which I love.
Yes,
the
hold it up there. And also if you can tell us the subtitle, because, right.
Oh, yes. Overcoming Obstacles, Striving for Excellence, and Redefining Success, a subtitle that took me probably 6 months to get. And so sometimes I still forget it myself because it went through so many permutations. The biggest obstacle was whether I should actually make it into a book. Was there enough of a reason to do it? You know, the market is saturated with memoirs. You know, I'd already done one. I never thought I'd do another one. And I wasn't sure if there was enough of a there, if you know what I mean. So I
Yeah.
hired a developmental editor, and, you know, I said, what do you think of these, you know, first dozen blogs? Is there something here? And he thought there was. And part of the problem I had was giving myself permission to say, yeah, there is something here.
Mm,
And I went along, the more I felt it. But I also hired, just for a few sessions, a life coach to help me tap into the enthusiasm and give myself permission to go for it. Once I did that, the writing went much faster. I couldn't believe it.
mm.
So in less than a year, then I had a finished, polished manuscript.
And how many drafts did you go through to get to that manuscript?
I don't count drafts because I was, you know, the way I work anyway, it's not like I go all the way through a draft and then start again. It's, you know, you get a thought in the middle of the night. That scene, no, I want to add this to that scene. So it's a constant, it's kind of like, I don't know, mixing dough or so. You just keep mixing. And at a certain point, you have to let go.
Yeah, yeah, because it feels very polished and very complete. And it sounds like it didn't take you that long. So it was meant to.
It was shocking to me, and I really credit working with my life coach who gave me some tips and giving myself permission and working in slow, steady, dedicated chunks and not allowing myself to get constantly distracted, which is my Achilles heel.
Okay, and we're going to be talking about that in a bit. Um, so t tell us how you got started as a writer and how your career evolved.
Well, I was never good at anything other than writing in words. Even as a young child, math just perplexed me. It still does. And so I was always drawn to writing. And in college, and I tell these stories too, I start Bylines and Blessings with being a very overly full of myself 18-year-old who somehow thought that I was already a writer with almost no experience, writing for a Jewish campus paper at UCLA just once or twice. It was a disaster. And then moving to Berkeley and becoming the assistant editor of a quarterly Jewish publication there, then becoming the editor, getting an internship in New York, and then a wonderful stroke of blessing, I got a full-time job right after college as a writer for a trade magazine. Trade magazines, as distinct from consumer magazines, those are industry specific. And it
Right.
just went on from there.
Yeah. And you don't just write memoir as well. You write articles and humor. Tell us a bit about these other kinds of writing that you do and how do you manage all these different strings to your bow?
I've always written humor. My first published piece in a regular newspaper was called Fear of Fat, Don't Let It Make You Skinny. I write about that incident, selling that story here because I was so thrilled. And the next week I opened the paper. It was a daily paper, but I knew that the letters to the editor for that section would come on Saturday. And I wanted to see that there was a letter to the editor that said how brilliant it was. And there was a letter to the editor who said how terrible it was because I was making fun of people who had diabetes. And I don't know where she got that from. So it's one of the many lessons. You know, don't ever think that everybody or even most people are going to like what you do, because they won't. And everybody has their sensitivities and all of that. So I've always just been drawn to that. I loved reading Irma Bombeck as a child and an adult, and the way that she was able to look at life's absurdities and frustrations and take a step back and get some perspective and find the funny in it. And that
Mhm.
has served me well.
Yeah, definitely serving us well in your when we read your books. You also mentioned something in your book that caught my attention. You said that in Judaism, there's a particular importance attributed to words and to their impact. Tell us how you take on that concept and it influences you as a writer.
So thank you for asking that question. Words create worlds,
Mm.
and words can destroy worlds. And you know the phrase to die of embarrassment?
Yeah.
So somebody is embarrassed by something somebody else has said. And we've seen, horrible situations where people have, God forbid, taken their own lives from cyberbullying. Words are so powerful. And that is why the Jewish tradition cautions us and has a lot of rules about what you can say, what you can't say. For example, you can't demean people. You can't just go around doing that. You better have a good reason if you're going to say something negative, so that reflects negatively on somebody else, because that's how powerful words are. And as a writer, that made such an impact on me. I mean, the whole journalism industry would collapse immediately if everybody in it were obligated to keep 100th of the rules, So I wanted my words to be on the right side of things. That doesn't mean just writing love notes to people. It doesn't mean that you can't be tough and shouldn't be tough. I can be very tough, but you also have to be very careful. Is this fair? Is this accurate? And there is so much less of that in today's journalism world. And we all know this, and we all are feeling the price that we're all paying for it.
Yes, indeed. And are there any rules against gossip?
Oh, completely.
Mhm.
Gossip is forbidden. It is forbidden.
Mhm.
And there are times when you are allowed to say something negative about, but you have to have a real reason. For example, if somebody's considering marrying somebody and you know something pretty significant about that person, you kind of want to make sure that they know. So, or you're going to go into business with somebody, because marriage is the ultimate business, right? So you have to have a true cause in order to share negative information.
That is fascinating and a great rule for life. In both the examples you gave, you actually have that person's interest in mind.
Yes,
And as you said, they may or may not heed your advice, much as
for sure.
people may
They
or
may
may not.
right, they may resent you for telling them, but you've done your bit, and it has to be, people won't hear what you have to say unless they feel that you're saying it not for your interest, but for because you have their best interest in mind.
Yeah.
If they believe that, then you'll be heard.
Yeah. And we know writing takes a huge amount of time and energy. And you speak in your book about having other commitments to your family, to your community, to your religion. How do you balance all these different commitments with something that takes as much personal energy as writing?
Many years ago, again, I write about this in the book. I've gone through different crises in my writing life. One of them was just feeling the failure of not having achieved a certain amount of commercial success or broad success, a big enough audience, or what have you. And then during times of crisis for the Jewish people, because there's no end to those, right? Wondering whether I should keep writing humor, or maybe I should only do more serious writing. And I would go and consult with wise people. And one of those wise people told me, creativity is energy. And I never forgot that. And I wrote it down and I taped it to my computer. Creativity is energy. So I know that I have to do it. I mean, I want to do it. It doesn't
Mm.
feel like work. It's work, and yet it's not work. When you love it, it's not work, as they say, but it's still work.
Yes.
So I just made the time, and my kids are all long grown up. They're all married. Most of them live out of state. They still call a lot, and I have a wonderful husband, and I do manage our home and prepare for our holidays and have friends and a life. But I just make the time because this is what I do. I have to do it.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to live with me if I'm not doing
I can relate to that, Judy. Um,
it.
and I know that you're an editor as well as a writer.
Yeah.
How do you separate, first of all, in your own work, your creative flow from your editor's mind? Are you able to turn off that part of your mind when you're in flow? How do you manage the two? And do you edit your own work? That's another question, but it's related.
I definitely edit my own work, but if it comes to a book, I hire editors and
Okay.
multiple editors. I want more than one perspective.
Who do you
For
tell us a
just,
bit about that as well, if you can? What kinds of editors when you say multiple editors?
okay, so I'll do that first. With both memoirs, I hired first a developmental editor, which for those who are not familiar, because there's a lot of different terms in the
Mhm.
editing, is somebody who's taking a macro look at the content. They're not doing line editing. They're not suggesting different words. They're looking at overall flow and content. That's very important. And once the developmental edit is done, and in the last case, he and I both agreed we're there, only then do I go to a line editor, copy editor.
Right.
In terms of my own editing, I've edited several nonfiction books, memoirs, and books on Jewish thought and philosophy. And I love that work. I find it very meaningful, and it's a wonderful alternative in contrast to focusing on my own work. Focusing just on my own work all the time, I don't think it's quite as healthy, at least not for me.
Right.
And there's creativity in editing too, believe me. And it's just a nice break. And it's another kind of satisfaction. I'm helping another writer get their message across. And they're generally so pleased, I'm happy to say, with my work. And I've helped them get their message out there. It's extremely gratifying.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a blessing onto them for sure.
Yeah.
And when you are writing your own memoirs or pieces, you find you can set aside your picky editor mind at that time.
It's been hard, that I have a perfectionist streak when it comes to my writing, but if you want to get the work out there, you have to be willing to say, it's time to let go. You time to let go, and let's move on to the next thing. But
Right.
I've been doing this for over 40 years, so I do have a very good sense of when something is good enough or when I'm just not there yet. And if I know I'm just not there yet on a piece, I'll put it aside unless I'm on a deadline, and there is no putting it aside. And I just maybe we'll take a walk around the block a few times, clear my head, come back. And even that little break can give me enough of a fresh perspective that I can say, oh yeah, this paragraph, what's it doing there? It needs to go down there. Or,
Right.
fix it up and saying, okay, on the shelf next. So but I love it. I've never stopped loving writing.
Mm. And what did you learn about yourself from writing Bylines and Blessings?
Well, I guess two things. One is that I could write a book a lot faster than I thought I could when I had the right input, that my friend Jill, who was the life coach I hired, and even though she was a friend, I still hired her because I knew she'd give it to me straight. She wasn't going to. She could separate. We both knew our friendship is here and the coaching is here,
Right.
and so that opened up a certain freedom that I didn't think I could do it. because I always haven't been the most efficient writer. I became so much more efficient through her help. And the other thing was that this book was inside me and I didn't know it.
Mm,
Didn't know it. And the lessons that I'm sharing, when I say lessons, I don't mean for it to sound like it's a pedantic work. It's a fun book, but it's a fun book with a lot of, I think, very substantive content, life lessons and career lessons about determination and working hard for it for its own sake and for the sake of becoming a professional in whatever you're choosing to do, and using your leaning into your faith values unapologetically, especially in a time when those kinds of values are so often ridiculed and demeaned by the society that we live in, and just standing up for them, which I have done. So there were a lot of valuable points in here, and I just didn't know that they were all there ready to coalesce.
yes, and it certainly has. I mean, your book was very meaningful to me as a new-ish writer. I've been working for about 5 years or so in my writing career, and I found it very helpful. And understanding that there's a deeper meaning to what we do beyond, commercial success, which we know can be very elusive in this career. And the path that you took from a young age until, being a more established writer is really fascinating. So I think other writers and other people embarking on maybe artistic or similar type careers or wanting to follow their passion, are going to get a lot from it.
I want to make a point about it, and thank you, first of all, thank you for that. I'm thrilled with the responses that I'm getting. I'm thrilled. And I'm even a little surprised at how universal it is, because after all these years, I've learned, as I said much earlier in the interview, not everybody's going to love what you do, and that's okay. But I'm getting such fantastic response. It's just delightful. But I have a very nice Kirkus review, but one thing that the reviewer said that really bugged me was that I don't know if it's a he or she, I'll say she, um, said that, it's not like I had any kind of real great journalistic career. So she kind of questioned the premise of my even writing a memoir about my career. But she totally missed a crucial point, which is one of the ongoing themes of my book, is that I know I wasn't, I never claimed to be. And that's part of the message, is that I learned to redefine success as having impact, not just having impact, but becoming the best that I can be. And maybe I'm probably not there yet, but just that never giving up on the quest for further growth, professional growth, personal growth.
Right.
So she really missed that. I thought, what?
Yeah, I'm
I
surprised
don't
about that
I
because
don't
there's
claim to be, oh yeah, I was covering foreign wars, or I broke this story, or I never claimed anything like that. Because I'm a more regular garden variety type of person, that I think a lot of people might be able to relate to me from that standpoint, that no, I'm not going to be that kind of person getting this kind of award. It doesn't matter. My work matters, and finding the meaning in the work and knowing that it has impact. And so maybe you haven't reached the biggest audience. That doesn't matter either. You could
Mm,
still change lives.
yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it's not like you're claiming to write a celebrity memoir either. So I do find that a little odd because where is that line? I find as writers and myself in my career, how do you define success? It can be very arbitrary. Is what's the number? What is the reach you're aiming for? And I think that your book and your message takes us out of those um, almost numerical, if you will, measures of success, which are probably better placed in other industries, and realizing that if it's a passion, if it's something we were born to do, and if we're impacting lives, that is the success.
Yes, I agree, Joelle.
So, on that note, what would you advise other writers starting out on their careers, and particularly life writers, memoirists, journalists, that kind of writing based on reality?
Well, of course, the whole industry has changed radically, and it's changing every single day with more and more work just appearing on digital platforms.
Okay.
So on one hand, that opens up many more possibilities. People are starting Substacks, and some people are really finding a lot of success. Pardon me.
Mm.
Some people are finding a lot of success on Substack, building their own audiences and just not even trying to get into other websites or it's so hard to break in. There are fewer and fewer rate what I'll call traditional or typical media outlets, and some that are here today are gone tomorrow. Um, I'm glad I don't have to try and break in now. It was a lot easier when I was starting out. First of all, there were no digital, everything was still print, and I love print. I still like to read print books, and I like to have a physical newspaper. I like print. And studies show that your retention is considerably better reading in paper than on a screen. And they find that even with high school kids who have grown up reading on screens.
Interesting.
Yes. So in terms of advice, if you're brand new and you love writing, find classes that will help you get those basic skills. If you have a passion or a strong interest in a certain area, science, music, um, whatever it is, look for the places where you like to read those things.
Mhm.
And as you build your skills, look for places where you can try and break in. And I assume that would be somewhere in the digital world. But overall, I would say commit to excellence, commit to working hard, because this is not something that you get to a certain mastery level and say, I'm there. I don't think any writer who loves writing ever says, I'm there, I don't have anything else to learn. That's just not the way it is in the creative world, certainly. And
Yeah,
probably not in the scientific world either, because there's always something new to discover.
yeah, that's great advice.
Oh, one more thing. I do think this is important. Many people, writers in particular, can become very sensitive to what we used to call constructive criticism. I don't think you can say that anymore. It's probably, politically incorrect. Even feedback can be triggering, and I have no patience for that. If you want to learn, be willing to learn and listen to people who are more experienced than you and who are really just trying to help you and mentor you and teach you. It's not personal, but writing is personal. It can be personal. You have to be willing to separate your ego from your craft. It's hard to do, but I think you have to be willing to say, I'm going to be grown up enough to hear this and to make myself better as a result of it.
It goes with the advice you gave around that you've never arrived.
Yeah, Wendy. Yeah. I mean, you get to a point where you know that you've got competence and then perhaps excellence, but this is a long process. It takes time. And it's okay that it takes time because everything is dynamic.
Yeah, well, that's good. And finally, is there anything else that you'd like to share or add?
Um, well, I'm very appreciative to you, Joelle, for this opportunity to share some thoughts about writing with your audience. And I'm, like I said, this book, I'm still a little surprised when I see it that it exists. I didn't expect to do it, but that's part of the creative process, is letting yourself be taken by surprise and to be open to new ideas. And I am just thrilled that people from different walks of life, different fields completely are all getting something out of this. It's extremely gratifying. Oh,
Yes.
I will say that it is available, paperback, softcover, hardcover, and of course, ebook platforms.
And Judy, just finally tell us, where would you like people to purchase your book or to obtain your book?
Well, it's available on any online bookseller, but the reviews and the rankings on Amazon do kind of matter. So it's available in hardcover, softcover, and ebook platforms. Um, I'd like people to ask their libraries to order it, so you can order it from a library. More and more libraries are doing so. I'm also very happy to be a guest in anybody's book club group. And I just want people to enjoy it. If you do read it and enjoy it, please leave a review.
Yes, please do. It's so important. It doesn't take that long, and it means everything to writers. And I just want to close by saying thank you so much, Judy. I'm delighted that we had the opportunity to speak a bit more. We've been in touch since before we both published our latest memoirs, my first and your second, and on the back of many other books. So thanks again. It was wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you, Joelle. Thanks very much. And best of luck with your new book as well.
Thank you.